joining us here outside the Lenovo Center, his place of business. Mike Maniscalco, the voice of the Canes, sitting down with us outside here on the plaza. Mike, appreciate you for stopping out here.
Oh, good to see you, Tim. When you were talking about doing a lot of damage, I thought you were referring to me, which, yeah, I can.
Hey,
been known to.
Yeah, it's as I've been talking about with the Canes, not bad, right? You lead the league in hits. That's something that you should be excited about.
I like to play the physical game. That's what I'm known for. So we get from here, and clearly that is, I know, one of the concerns here coming into Game 5. I know you have a lot of questions. I'll do my best to answer them for you.
Well, let's talk about it. If there's a line to do damage, Stahl, Martinook today, they're getting paired with, it appears, after morning skate with Jarvis.
Yeah.
You put Stahl, Martinook, and Carrier. That they're doing some damage. You throw Jarvis on there, they flip spots. What do you think was the motivation for a little change up in the lines?
Well, I think one of the things that you look at for that is Seth Jarvis provides a little bit more of an offensive edge to that line when you put him there with, going back to the 80s for us, his two dads. You can pick who's Greg Evigan and who's Paul Reiser, but I'm gonna lean Jordan Martinook is probably Greg Evigan of the two. But when you look at that, you're trying to, if you're Rod brind'amour, you're trying to create balance in the lineup where every line can pose a problem for the opposition. And putting Seth Jarvis at home with Stahl and Martinook, well, now if you're Sheldon Keefe, you're like, well, if I try to put my third line out against them, they're going to be even more dangerous because they're going to hang on to pucks, and Seth Jarvis is going to create offense, and there'll be more room for him to operate. If I put my best offensive line against them, that's the Nico Hischier line or Jesper Bratt. You can flip a coin. Both of those lines have been good in spurts. Well, now those guys don't like to play defense. So now you're going to have big bodies who are going to be checking around. I actually like moving Will Carrier up with Jesperi Kotkaniemi and Taylor Hall just to give them a little bit more of, you do the heavy lifting, Will Carrier, and you can make Taylor Hall and Jesperi Kotkaniemi a little bit more dangerous. And then Andrei Svechnikov coming off of the hat trick. I mean, you're not going to tamper with that line. And I really think if you go back to Game 4 and watch the Mark Jankowski line, he draws into the postseason with Eric Robinson and Logan Stankoven. They had a shift that went about 45, 50 seconds, and the Devils just couldn't get the puck from them. And I think that kind of set the tone, even though you can run down who scores first or how it comes into play. But for me, the Canes scoring 52 seconds in, that's huge. Yeah. But then having the shifts that they're known for. And that's what you're seeing right now. And, of course, the one thing that we always know in a hockey game, it's like basketball. That's your starting five. Doesn't mean that it's going to be your five on the floor the whole time.
You brought up Svech and the hat trick. What's different about Svech in the postseason than the last like month and a half of the regular season, where there was some frustration, and now he's playing? I mean, at times, absolutely lights out.
It's going to sound really simple, but he's shooting the puck. And I mean,
6 shots last game.
Again, a lot of times, you're always trying to look for some Rosetta Stone answer that cracks the code. And a lot of times it's the simplest thing. And he's shooting the puck and he's being active and he's at his best. Now, if you ask him, and this goes back to when he comes in, he thinks of himself more of a playmaker and not a goal scorer. But
can we rewire that and say, well, I mean, I like the selflessness.
No.
But go get your goals, young man.
Trust me, that's one of the things that the coaching staff is trying to do with him. But he also knows that he can be a goal scorer. And I think in the situation that he's in right now with that grouping, he knows that he can be the goal scorer and that Aho and Blake can set him up. And, the funny thing is, I like that line because you have two shooters on it now, because Sebastian Aho, to me, is more of a shooter, more of the goal scorer. And Jackson Blake I haven't seen him lose a 50-50 puck, or if it's happened.
Great against the boards, especially for someone his size.
And that's the thing. And, I mean, you run down the list of, how have the Canes been winning this series? For the most part, the special teams have been the key. They've just clearly been better than New Jersey on the power play and the penalty kill. But then those 50-50 pucks where you keep the puck in the zone or you get a puck out because you win a board battle. And the guys who've been winning it are Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake and Seth Jarvis, not exactly the giants of the team, but when you can do that, when you can take pucks away from bigger opposition, that starts to, I don't want to overstep my boundary here, but it starts to demoralize the other team. You're like, how come we're not coming up with the pucks? When you're looking at film going, how are these guys doing it? So we'll see if he can continue it. But this is, and I'll throw out the cliche, the last one, the fourth one, is always the hardest one to win because the other team doesn't want to go home. They didn't want to play 82 and be done in 5. So we'll see how this one starts out.
Mike Maniscalco, voice of the Canes, joining us outside the Lenovo Center here on 99.9 The Fan. I want some kind of an award because I believe we just went 6 minutes without talking about the goalies going into this.
I was trying to do that on purpose.
But I mean, you could look at this a bunch of different ways, right? Yeah. Obviously, Freddie's been playing really well,
yep.
and he's not available in this one, which is a bummer. But the glass half full is this is an awesome opportunity for Pyotr Kochetkov. If we get good Pyotr,
yeah.
then this could be a whole change up for his confidence. What do you expect tonight from Pyotr Kochetkov?
I expect it'll be good Pyotr, and I think we're going to get that because it could have really gone off the rails in Game 4. That second shot that he allows in, he will tell you that should never go in
I'll take
any
your
league
word
anywhere.
For it that it was the second. It felt like the first thing that happened as soon as he got on the ice. It felt very quick, and you're right. It did make you go, uh-oh.
And when we're up there in the booth and, you're calling the game, you're not trying to think ahead. You try to stay in the moment. But after that goal and then you see the replay, your mind drifts to, all right, how much longer are the Canes going to be in the lead? Because that goal made it 3-2. But then after that, he settled down. He played a calm game. Now, I know that it's funny. Like, people like to use stats, as you do this to back their point and try to tell you that.
We can twist numbers all
oh, my God. Shall we? It's not that Corsi. You need this actual number. I'm fine. He set a career high in wins this year for Pyotr Kochetkov. He had a stretch where he was just outstanding. Every time you put him in, 7-game win streak, you knew that he was going to give you a chance to win. And then things kind of, hit a rough patch. Everybody hits a rough patch in the course of a season. And for me, it's always timing. If you're great at the start of the year, everybody forgets about it at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. If you're terrible at the start of the year, everybody remembers it at the end of the year. Well, remember, he was so bad in October, November. I know that's human nature, but I think that this is a great opportunity for him. I think the fact that he settled down and really preserved the victory in game number 4, he should be in the right mindset for this one. I'm not worried about, who are we going to get tonight. I think, especially if the Canes continue to play defensively in front of the goalie the way that they have in this series, I don't think you really have to worry about it. And in some way, and I got to tip the cap to Trip Tracy on this one, he said, I think letting that goal in actually calmed him down. Mm-hmm. And I want to be
we referenced that exact point from Trip earlier.
I want to be like, I'm glad it calmed you and him down because I think everybody else, the other 99%, was like not so sure. But the more you go back, and I go back and watch the game, he did. Yeah. He calmed down from it, and it's just like, all right, well, that's over with. Now let's just move on. So we'll see. But this is a big, big opportunity for him. But I do think that he can deliver. And we know this, no kidding. These guys are competitors, everybody at this level. He knows that there's a knock about him in the postseason right now. And what a better chance to exercise those demons. I know they're playing the Devils, so I'm not trying to make a pun.
Series started on Easter Sunday.
Yeah, I know, exactly. It was right there. Trust me, you have no idea how hard it was for me to avoid half of those. But I think for Pyotr Kochetkov, this is the opportunity literally to just have the exorcism of postseasons past and win a series and move on to the next one.
And you would think that there'd be a little bit of goal support coming his way.
You would.
Brett Pesce, Siegenthaler, game time decisions.
Yeah.
Are you like checking AHL rosters to make sure you get the pronunciations right for whoever's playing defense for the Devils? They got to be calling people out of the stands.
I'll go with this one for Sheldon Keefe. This might be a little bit of gamesmanship, like who's in, who's out. The one thing I know about Brett Pesce, and from his time in a Canes uniform, you're gonna almost have to call him clinically deceased for him not to play today. I think that he wants in this lineup the absolute worst he can, but then it comes down to, if you're not going to help the team, are the Devils going to want you in the lineup? There'll be a couple of different looks. I know that Luke Hughes is not going to play and Brendan Dillon's not going to play, and those are two, and it has been two huge gaps in the Devils' defense. And this is something where I look at today, all right, maybe you're going to give some young guy a chance, and look, it worked for Shimon Nemitz. He had the game winner in overtime in game 3 in Jersey, that, he got his legs under him. But, to drop, and read into this what people will, but to drop a player into the middle of a playoff series who's never played playoff hockey in the NHL, you're asking a lot for that person to do that. So we'll see if the Canes can take advantage of it.
Kovacevic also out today, I believe.
Yeah.
It's another one.
So like half the defense, and technically you can then get to it. It's 2/3 of the defensive pairings for the Devils could be guys who've only played 2, 3, or 0 games of playoff experience.
I speaking of things that we should have a medal for going this long without talking. Last one before we let you go. I mean, when you start talking about guys with no NHL playoff experience and throwing them in and how difficult that is, Alexander Nikishin.
Yeah.
What's the word on the street of, he's been now in the building, at least hanging out with everybody.
Yeah.
What's the intro, and I don't know, how do you see it playing out?
I think the fact that he's actually getting practice time and getting to be more comfortable with, 1, his surroundings, 2, what the Canes are going to ask for him to do, how they play defensively, that he can watch it and see that, just being more comfortable with his teammates, and I think having the fact that he has got Andrei Svechnikov, having Dmitry Orlov, having Pyotr Kochetkov, and then Ruslan Kazayev, to talk to with him during the games. A lot of people were wondering, why was he the third goalie? I think in the back of my mind is they had somebody for Nikishin to talk to during these games and go back and forth with. So to that end, Rod has said it. First off, the team's up 3-1. So I get it. I know
there's 2 ways, right? Because then it's like you have the cushion to experiment, but also if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's both sides.
I'm always if it ain't broke, don't fix it, especially in the playoffs. If it was 3-1 Devils, put them in, because now what do you have to lose by putting them in? It's that I look at it that way. It's always can you bring in something where, well, we've tried this and it's not working. We let's try something else. Everything the Canes done has worked, and even in game 3, they're down 2-0. They force overtime, and then that becomes a coin flip game. So I get fans always want, oh, look what he did here. I've never heard anybody.
That grainy KHL footage is tantalizing.
It's great, but I've never heard anybody truly clamor for a player who is 24 years old in the AHL that he needs to make his NHL debut here. Now, a few guys can get dropped in. Cale Makar got dropped into the playoffs a few years ago. He's different. There's some guys who are different. Now,
Rod Brind'amour, game 5, first shot, first goal.
I mean, so those are the things you're looking for. But I think if the Canes were looking to change any kind of momentum or tide, that would be it. But look, folks, the playoffs becomes a war of attrition. And let's talk any sport ever. Do you think that any coach in any sport, especially when it's in the playoffs, would not play a player that they feel would give them the best opportunity to win a game?
And coaches they're wildly competitive, and especially the ones that give off Rod's vibe.
I just ask that for everybody. Now, look, I'm a Yankees fan, and I can go back to 1995 when Buck Showalter didn't realize what he had in Mariano Rivera, and he could have brought him in. But that's one of those things where
Showalter still thinks about that occasionally.
As well, he should. But
Joe Torre should have been me.
And if my dad was still with us, God rest his soul, he would still tell me why Joe Torre didn't bunt on Kurt Schilling. But I'm just driving in this point of the 6 defensemen that you've had virtually all year. Mm-hmm. There's been nothing any of them have done in this series to say you need to do a change here. And trust me, as the playoffs move along, opportunities are going to present themselves.
Last one real quickly here. First goal score prediction. Do you have a vibe? Do you have a gut? Just to entertainment purposes only?
Yeah, you know what? I do. And I'm going to go with it's going to be Jordan Martinook.
Love it.
Because he owns the Devils. So
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I could expound more, but yeah. Oh, yeah.
First period,
maybe second shift of the game.
All right. I love the specifics. Mike, appreciate it. Have a great call.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.